Welcome back to Beyond Markets. Now, this past weekend, Zimbabwe and Zambia co-hosted the United Nations World Tourism Organization's General Assembly. Earlier today, I spoke to the executive chairman and founder of Brand Africa, Thebe Ikalafeng, on the significance of this global event for repositioning Zimbabwe's national brand identity.
Well, without any doubt, because what an international event, the fact that you can attract an international event says that your country has got some international attraction or attractiveness. So yes, in many ways, I'd say that it shows, if anything else, the ability and attractiveness of your country.
Let's look at Zimbabwe in particular. The country is fresh out of elections. The president just been inaugurated last week. And despite this and all the negative perceptions that surround Zimbabwe, we see an event successfully pulled off. What does this mean for Brand Zimbabwe?
Well, Zimbabwe has always been a country with great potential. You must remember, other than all the negative economic and political issues related to Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe has always been seen as that one inspirational or certainly one country with latent potential. What it means, the ability to execute such a successful UNWTO event, means that Zimbabwe shows that it is on the way up and has the ability to reimagine itself and to reinvent itself for the future.
You speak about re-emergence and reinventing. Would you then agree that Zimbabwe has taken this opportunity, grabbed it with both hands, and is using it to reposition itself as a player on the international stage?
Indeed, because it happened so soon after the election, and the elections, by all accounts, went very successfully, and the event immediately after that, a week or two afterwards, goes off successfully itself. So it reinforces and builds onto this credibility that this country is indeed re-emerging from its past, and it's gearing itself for future success.
One usually associates rebranding or national rebranding with a change in political leadership, and yet we have this rather different case study. What does this mean? Talk us through it. Is it possible to even rebrand without a change in leadership?
Of course you can rebrand without change in leadership, because more what rebranding is really about retelling your story or redefining your story or telling a different story about your country. If you look at a country like Germany 2006, they wanted to tell a different story about Germany as a friendly country rather than Germany as a very cold and mechanical country. They used the event to retell that story. You look at the story of Japan, Korea, when they held the Olympics as well. They used the event to retell a different story of their countries. So the World Cup in South Africa, which happened in 2010, was not necessarily about the change in leadership. It was about retelling the story of South Africa as a country that is open for business, a country that is able to host tourists without any incidents of crimes and all those. And that went off successfully, and people looked at South Africa differently. Not the South Africa that we introduced to in 1994, but a South Africa that is 16 years down the road.
Of course, you speak about South Africa using the World Cup to retell its story, and it begs the question for me about the sustainability of having pulled off a big event. If we look into South Africa in particular, we have a lot of negativity around the continued usage of some of the facilities that were invested in leading up to the World Cup. How important is it now for Zimbabwe to show that over and beyond this particular event, Zimbabwe has a formidable story to tell?
You know, different to South Africa. In South Africa in 2010, the leader of the country spent over 50 billion in infrastructure, in stadia, in roads, in airports, and all those. Many of those are still are being used successfully. I think the story of the benefit of the World Cup is a long-term story. You cannot view it in 2-3 years down the road and say, was it good investment? It's investment for the long term. And I think with time, people will begin to see that South Africa has invested in better roads, and those better roads will lead to better economic growth for the country, in better infrastructure, airports, and all those. And in time, South Africa will begin to use some of the infrastructure in stadia, for example, to develop our sports in the country. Now, if you look at South Africa, at Zimbabwe, the difference between the UNWTO and the World Cup is that the UNWTO did did not require an investment in infrastructure. It was really a hosting of an important meeting, global meeting in the country that many people do not know about. What the World Cup did for South Africa and what UNWTO will do for Zimbabwe as well, it exposed South Africa to the world, to South Africa. Similarly, the many leaders who came to Zimbabwe will be able to go back with a different story of Zimbabwe, because much of the perceptions that are created about African countries, whether it's Zimbabwe, whether it's South Africa, whether it's Ghana, whether it's Kenya, whether it's Nigeria, are based on theory. They're based on what they read or what they watch from other media, rather than experiential or rather being there themselves. So what this does is, for other international leaders in the world, they come to Zimbabwe, they get to experience Zimbabwe, they get to interact with Zimbabwe and other African leaders, and they get to go back and say, we can do business with this country. And that is a good story.
Before I get to the specific outcomes of this particular meeting, which are very exciting, I want to go back to this perception that you have, that you talk about, of the international community changing its view about Africa. We talk about Africa's growth story. We talk about this at WEF and all other international gatherings. And Zimbabwe has, to a large extent, almost been the black sheep on the African continent. Do you think that changing around Zimbabwe is the key to really change around the fundamental negativity that underpins brand Africa?
Well, Zimbabwe is most certainly one of those countries that we have to work with to ensure that the perceptions are changed, because much of the perception that the world has of Africa is based on pockets of different countries. They visit Zimbabwe and they have a negative experience and apply it to the rest of the continent. So that country effect, as we like to say. They have a positive experience in Angola. They say Angola is a great country. South Africa is a great country. So I think it's not just about Zimbabwe. It's not just about South Africa, but it is about every single country changing perceptions about every single country in Africa, because we've got 54 countries, all at various levels of development. What we need to do, we need to understand where each country is in their political and economic and social development, and work with it, and the internal people must work on changing perceptions about that country from that perspective. And when that begins to happen, you're beginning to change the collective experience, the collective perception of Africa. What Africans need to remember is that we need to think not as individual 54 countries, but we need to think collectively, because if we don't work collectively, we'll be destroying the entire continent. But in working collectively, we have to respect the sovereignty of the various countries, but also understand the different levels of where the countries are socially, economically, as well as politically. Well, this is probably the most exciting thing out of this meeting, is the announcement of working towards creating a single visa for 27 SADC countries by next year, and as imminent as next year. What this means, it means Africa now is beginning to work and think collectively, and to understand the collective impact of Africans being able to move within Africa with ease and to trade within Africa with ease. If you look at the world economy, how it works, Africa within Africa trades with itself 12 to 15%. If you look at how Europe does it, Europe trades within itself 65 to 70%. And therein lies the secret of where the success of Africa lies. The success of Africa lies in Africans investing in Africa, Africans believing in Africa, Africans visiting Africa. And let's just narrow it down and look at one country as an example. South Africa alone, last year, 2012, attracted 9.2 million visitors. And the majority of those visitors, 6 million of them, come from within the continent of Africa. And those visitors invested in South Africa over 48 billion rand. And that is a large number compared to the 80 billion that that visitors made in South Africa alone. So that just begins to show you, if we just work on just one country and we have a multiplier effect, and we get South Africans visiting Kenya, Kenya, Kenyans visiting Ghana, Ghanaians visiting Nigeria. You can imagine what's going to happen. There'll be a free flow of ideas. There'll be a free flow of money. There'll be a free flow of talent. And that's the level that we need to move to. We need to move towards Africans investing in Africa, Africans believing in Africa, and Africa growing together. This country is only 19 years old. There's a lot of fundamentals which are in place, but obviously we're experiencing growing problems. This country, in 19 years, we were going through three phases. The first phase was what you call a political emancipation. The second phase is what you call economic emancipation. And the final phase is what I call social cohesion or identity emancipation. We are now right in the midst of the economic emancipation. So what you're beginning to see, you are seeing that that strife, that tension that happens as we are now moving into this area where the haves and the have-nots are struggling to come to a point. This is one country which everybody agrees is probably one of the more unequal societies. But I think that's a problem that everybody in the country recognizes, that everybody is working towards. But the country's only been around for 19 years. So I think we will survive this. We should survive this because we're a resilient country. We're a country that knows how to come out of difficulties. And I think you'll see with time that the whole country is not in turmoil. It's just pockets in the country, which are pockets of labor issues and pockets of political issues. But in the main, South Africa is a great country to be in. It's a great country. It is the leading power in Africa. If you look at 65 to 70% of the top 200 most valuable companies in Africa are all South African. And if you look of the top 40, out of the 40 companies which the Boston Consulting Group identified as the global African countries, 18 companies, 18 of them are from South Africa. We've got the fundamentals. We've got problems. As a 19-year-old, you know how teenagers are. I think we'll survive this as well.
Of course, that was Thebe Ikalafeng, Executive Chairman and founder of Brand Africa.